thank all the people involved in coordinating this event. And there's nothing to say but that a person who has vacation does on vacation what he would like to do when he's not on vacation. So by the fact that you're here today, that represents an idea that you would theoretically like to be here every day. And other obligations force you not to be here. But when you don't have those obligations and you're here, the Chafetz Chaim writes that a person who goes to work because he has to, but it's really all part of his plan in as avodas Hashem, he gets schar for the work that he does as part of his avodas Hashem. So not only is there a mitzvah of limud Torah barabim, which is called the Kiddush Hashem, happening here today by the limud Torah, it also reflects our yearning of limud Torah throughout the rest of the days that are weekdays, that some people have to go to work and some people have other obligations, but that we can be here today is a important point of direction in our lives. What's important? I'd like to discuss halachos in Hilchos Brochos about ideas and situations that people are very aware of and don't realize the intricacies of the halachas that they're at. I'm going to start with something which is probably a bombshell. In America, more than in Eretz Yisrael, there is an idea called a smorgasbord. Whoever doesn't know what I'm talking about, good for you. What?
It already came here.
It already came here. Okay. Okay. As I say as a joke, bar minan. But the smorgasbord is some kind of a eating orgy which happens to keep the guests tame until the ceremony happens, and after the ceremony they can do what they came for it to eat. That's the secular version of a wedding, and unfortunately it's been adapted in many even from communities. And there's a question about what is the status of a bracha achroina after the smorgasbord. I know that there are many people in America, I say this as a joke, although I actually know somebody, a great tzaddik here in Eretz Yisrael, that he only washes on Shabbos. And therefore, for many tens of years, he has a debate with himself if he isn't sure if he said ritzeh, if he has to go back or not. Because he never benches without ritzeh, he only benches on Shabbos. When I heard this question, I started to laugh. I said, this is everybody in America. Everybody in America, they only wash on Shabbos. Why would anybody wash in the middle of the week? Bread isn't really part of what they eat. And we'll discuss that too. The people who wash have a little piece of what I call the washing station at the chasna, a little piece of amotzi. And that's good to go till the mayim achronim, which is about that size. That's basically the situation of bread. We have a Suda, and conceptually, the bread is center stage in the meal. Alechem yichya adam, that's the staff of life. And everything else is a condiment related to support, excuse me, the main dish, which is called the bread. And even if it's not a main dish, that's called the bread, but it's part of the seuda, which was what the bread represents. So all of it is part of that sal, that general unit, and everything is incorporated in it. There are exceptions to that, and we'll just use an example. At my Shabbos table, one of my kids asked me, and he was holding this in his pocket for a long time. He had a candy, and our meal was taking a very long time. And he wanted to eat the candy in the middle of the meal. There was a great discussion going on, which was above his head, physically and mentally. And he wanted to know, can he eat his candy now? And I said, 100%, you just have to make a bracha on it. Why? Because that candy has nothing to do with the meal. Right? In fact, he had nothing to do with the meal either at that point, and that's why he have to make a bracha on it. So theoretically, if it will be an adult who's in the middle of a Sheva Brochos and would like to have a mint that he has in his pocket during the speech, you'd have to make a bracha on it. It has nothing to do with the meal. He's not eating it to become full. He's not eating it for the purpose of the meal. It's something totally different. Just because it's in the time zone that the meal is happening does not make it automatically part of the meal, and it would warrant a bracha beforehand. And this is an important concept which people are unaware of. Why do people eat at the smorgasbord? Because it's there. They don't eat because they're hungry, because if that would be the case, they wouldn't take the amounts of food that they take. Right? They eat it because it's there. Has nothing to do with the meal which is going to happen, and therefore the simple halacha would be one is obligated to make a bracha achrona and cannot rely on the birchas hamazon which is going to be said in X amount of time. Okay, after the service, etc. They can't do it. Why? Because the halacha that birchas hamazon includes the foods that are eaten beforehand, at least in the lechatchila stage, is only things that are eaten as part of the meal. And being that this event of eating that is done at the smorgasbord has nothing to do with the meal, the pashtus is it is not included in the birchas hamazon. And if somebody would like to include it into the birchas hamazon, according to many opinions, he has to have at least have it in mind directly to include it, because it is not part of the meal.
This would be if you washed before the smorgasbord, right?
Even if I didn't wash, I ate meat, chicken, rice, barakas. Do I have to explain to you what's going on over there?
No, but you wouldn't have a time that you could bench if you didn't even wash before the smorgasbord.
No. I'm talking about they have to make a bracha achroin. They have to make a bracha nefashos. Bracha achroin, bench means an after bracha, not a birchas hamazon. Right? Whatever it was that I ate, spaghetti and meatballs, whatever's over there that's important to you, right? That you're eating that food, even though that's food, that exact same portion, you could be having in your meal, but the purpose of that achila is not part of the unit of the meal which you're going to eat later on, and therefore it's far from simple that it would be included. Yes?
Just to clarify, so if a person comes to a s'mores, what happens if they wash beforehand? They wash outside, they take a bite of a small piece of lechem, and now they enter in the s'more. On the das that they're going to be benching at some point, you know.
So then what they have made was they just made their su'uda that much bigger, right? That's not a smorgasbord that eating something before your su'uda. You're having your su'uda in sections.
So that's the question. That is, what's even the havamina? How could you even, if you haven't washed beforehand, how could you even think that those meatballs that you're
Because it's
eating,
part of what I'm eating.
what?
Unfortunately, I think that the majority of society doesn't understand your question. I made a bracha. These are things I'm eating in the meal. So I make a bracha. What's the difference? The meatball that I had before the meal, the meatball I had after the meal. Well, after I made a motzi. It's part of the same deal. Let it be included. Now, I just want, this idea is a very important idea. I would like to, just one second, I'd like to just clarify something. A person who has kiddush, what about a bracha achroina on that wine? So the halach is clear that one does not have to make a bracha achroina on that wine. Why? Because kiddush is b'mokum suda, and it enables a person to have the meal. So even though theoretically this isn't wine that's part of the meal, but since the meal needs the wine, so it's, so to speak, as they say in Darwin terms, it cut and pastes that wine as to being part of the meal.
As well.
I didn't say anything about the cake. We'll get to the cake in a minute. But here we have the idea of we have some kind of a thing which there's some need in the meal for what we're eating, and therefore it has the halacha that it's part of the meal. I'll get to the cake shortly. Next scenario. A person would have at the smorgasbord something which whets his appetite. Not curbs his appetite, whets his appetite, so that he should be able to eat later on. So he's going to have something which is gorer tavat achila, that's what's called in the poskim, something which makes him want to eat. So therefore, we see that there's a connection between what he's eating now and the Suda that's going to be happening. That's called part of the Suda, and in such a situation, Birchas Hamazon would incorporate it also. Why? Because there's a connection between the eating beforehand and the eating which is going to happen later on. The third example of this is, I would like to say something which I'm not exactly sure in our lives what it is that would go into the situation. There's certain kinds of foods that people would like to eat bedavka before they eat. No, it's 10 minutes before they eat. They want to have some kind of a something, and that sets the stage. The Sha'ar Tzion, when he discusses this halacha, he quotes a Gemara that they used to eat parparos before the Suda. They used to eat some kind of a condiment before the Suda. So again, anything which the way the Suda is formatted would include a pre-eating, so that pre-eating is included in the Birchas Hamazon. Why? Because it's part of the big package. Anything which we understand as part of the big package would be included in Birchas Hamazon. If it's not part of the big package, just because you decided to eat it, and you're having some kind of a mini meal before the main meal, we'll use the example of a smorgasbord, then it would not, the pashas, it would not be included. And the daiti, what should be done in such a situation is somebody should make a bracha achrona beforehand. In the case of the American event that this is happening, anyways, it's in a different room. You have a question of shinui makom, and that would be reason that you'd have to make a bracha achrona anyways. Here in Eretz Yisrael, usually it's in the same room that where the meal is going to be, so that shinui makom aspect you don't necessarily have, and we'll leave it at that. As far as the cake of the Suda, there's a discussion, and the Bi'alacha discusses this exact situation. The bottom line, he says the minig is not to make a bracha achrona and include it, because most of those cakes could have a din of pas, and they would therefore be included in the regular Birchas Hamazon and not need a bracha mein sholosh. More or less, that's the bottom line, and that is the minig in Klal Yisrael. Yeah.
How much?
Chassidim, I just want to make something that's so clear. Chassidim have a minig as follows, and this is something we're going to come back to, and maybe I'll answer this question as follows. The minig of Chassidim is that they wash. They come home, they make kiddush, they eat a piece of Yerushalmi kugel, and then they wash. Like, what's the big hurry? What's the big hurry? And the answer to that question is, there is no big hurry. But they have a issue. This is discussed already 400 years ago, this issue. Shabbos, we have a shortage of brochos. And we look to invent more brochos to get to the mea brochos a person has to have in a day. And therefore, what they do is, wherever they can, add in another bracha, they do. So they eat something in order to make another bracha, and that's the purpose of the kiddush according to some, and that is permissible to do because that lofty reason is called enough of a reason to allow it to be done according to some placekim. So here we have an idea. We have an idea that you're not allowed to make a bracha she'eina tzricha, because indeed, and this is something which happens many times. I'm asked this question and I don't know the answer to this question. I know the formula of the answer, but the technical answer, I don't know. Person comes home from shul, you have a kid who's 10 years old, and it doesn't look like there's any Suda on the horizon. And he says, I want to eat something, and he already had something beforehand. He doesn't have a kiddush problem. And the father says, wait, we're about to eat. And here's where Amuna comes in. About to eat what? He is lachutz, he wants to eat. And the father says, what are you going to eat in 5 minutes? Now, there's somewheres in the Amuna department where there's like a lack of belief, there's a disconnect. He needs to eat it now, he doesn't see the Suda happening, and the father says, we need it any minute, it's a bracha she'eina tzricha. The halacha is that if we don't see the direct connection, then it's permissible. If we see that this is immediately and eminently before the meal, it is forbidden, because of bracha she'eina tzricha. I would like to say this halacha in our environment, in a place where l'daiti, it's something which is a question I had for many years, probably about 25 years, and I'm beginning to sort of formulate to understand and answer to the question. When I was a bocher, I used to make a brocha on my tzitzis every day. Now that I'm married, one of the downsides is that I don't make a bracha on my tzitzis anymore. I only make a bracha on my talis gadol, and I incorporate the bracha on my tzitzis on that. Why? The Magen Avrohom says it's all the bracha she'ena tzricha. Why is it bracha she'ena tzricha? Because in 2 minutes I'm going to shul and I'm going to make a bracha on my talis gadol. Okay, that's fine for most people. I myself, Shabbos morning, wake up probably about 2 hours before I go to shul to daven. And I look at my tzitzis Shabbos morning in the morning, and I say, shouldn't I be making a bracha on you? Say this is called the bracha she'ena tzricha. Is this what the Magen Avrohom is talking about? There's no connect between waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and davening at 8 o'clock. Should one make a bracha on their tzitzis or not? Is the halacha that the Magen Avrohom is talking about even in that situation or not? I'm not going to discuss it, but that's the idea. If you're waking up, going to eat, it's called the bracha she'ena tzricha. So any time that a person is going to be eating, really you are not allowed to eat before you eat, because you're causing a bracha she'ena tzricha. When is it permissible? When you're not about to eat immediately. Immediately sometimes is defined by time, and immediately sometimes is defined, in my opinion, by a mindset. Okay? You have company, and you're a polite host, and you say you're not going to make kiddush until they come. And you told them to come at 11 o'clock. Are you allowed to eat at 5 to 11? I think so. Why? I don't think I have to explain it. Right? Because maybe they'll come, maybe they won't come, maybe they'll come at 11:30. You don't know. So it's not imminent. You hope and pray that they're going to come on time. But you don't know that they're going to come on time, so that's not called the bracha she'ena tzricha. So this is the basic halacha. If you're not allowed to really eat beforehand unless there's a reason. Now when you go to the chassid and have the smorgasbord, you're not eating right away. Why? Because there's a chuppah that's going to happen. There's things going on. It's not in front of you, the meal. Not only that, you usually see the caterer still setting up the situation. Right? It's not going to happen right now. Just because you know there's going to be a meal, that's not enough. It has to be that we see it eminently in front of you. Again, when exactly do I say that that's called in front of you or not? That I don't want to answer that question because I don't think it's a little bit fluid. It's not always the same. What was your question again? Just to get back to it.
My question was really with the kid. He makes kiddush. He made kiddush, ate some cake, had some cereal, and now we're about ready. Because now I came up with we're ready to eat the meal. Does he make a bracha?
Yes. Yes. Again, just so I didn't hear. That kid who made kiddush, that kid who is your wife, your daughter who wasn't in shul, and they made kiddush, and they ate their meal. Now, what were they thinking? Why did they eat that meal? They ate that meal because who knows when you're coming home, right? I have children that have that problem. They don't know when I'm going to come home, so they will make kiddush because who knows? So now that eating has nothing to do with the meal that's going to happen. So therefore, ideally, they should make a bracha achrona because there is no connection between that meal and the meal which they're about to eat.
Even if it was a mazonot.
Even if it was a mazonot. Because it's not one meal. They had one mini meal that ended, and now they're going to start another meal. It's not part of one. The reason why they ate it had nothing to do with the meal which was going to follow it. It's a very important idea that people are not aware of. That's one of the reasons why I'm stopping over here. Yes?
So just to come back to smorgasbord, the example you were using before, how much of it is totally on personal kavanah? A person walks into a smorg and they say, okay, I'm going to press it up now. This is part of the suda that I'm going to be eating afterwards.
I'll tell you, I don't agree with the question. No, it's hard for me to answer the question. I don't agree with the question. Right now I'm hungry. Now I want to eat.
Okay.
You also know you're going to eat later on. This eating has nothing to do with what's going to be going later on. The only thing is that you may look, excuse me for being so vulgar, and say you may look at the menu. If it's an upscale wedding, look at the menu. What's going to be served for the main dish to figure out how much you can eat now to leave over space for later, right? Excuse me for the nibble pet, but that's the you're not eating now because a part of the other meal. It's just a question how much room to leave over for the other meal. But there's no connection. It's not part of the same eating, right? If you're going to eat, which is an example, if you're going to eat shalashudas, and you have to go to a malav malka, so you may gauge how much you can eat by shalashudas because you're going to have to eat by the malav malka, but they're not connected. They're just things that you have to figure out in your life. How are you going to work out? How are you going to juggle these balls? But it's not part of one eating affair. Okay? That's that idea which I think is very important to hammer that idea home. All right. Again, there is a discussion in the Poskim, the Moshe discussed it a few places, nowadays where people eat very small amount of bread. They eat their piece of hamoitzi, and that's the end of it. The only other time that they eat, again, this is the American habit of eating, not the Israeli habit of eating. The Israelis just simin ladover. The Israelis who have all kinds of salatim, which they use linagev et halechem, that they use it together, they eat it with the bread. They actually eat bread. They're actually eating bread. That's part of what's going on. The Americans, they never heard of any of this stuff, because why eat bread if you could eat other things? Okay? I'm not right now discussing where that philosophy comes from, but that's what's going on. So a person, bottom line, according to many poskim, if a person's eating a meal that consists of bread, automatically bread becomes the main of the meal, and the other things are included in it. The situation, which is a great discussion about a modern question, which 20 years ago, if I would have said this word, probably 80% of you wouldn't have known what I'm talking about. And people that are celiac, people that can't eat bread, and they have to force to eat a little bit because of something, if that bothers them, if for the rest of the other things, is a great question in the Poskim. Okay, this is a modern question. Somebody who has this question, they should ask me afterwards. All right. The next thing which I would like to discuss is the concept of eating a candy. Chazal understood that people eat in a place. When I was a child, they used to say, if you eat when you're standing, you get fat legs. I don't know. They also said if you eat the watermelon pits, you grow watermelon. I don't know if either of them have been proved, but I don't think that these are realities of life. But a person is supposed to be koveya himself to eat. He's supposed to sit and eat in a place. We live in a place. The idea of walking around while eating is, when I say against the halacha, mean to say the halacha doesn't recognize that as an option in eating. A person eats in a place. That's called with derech eretz. You eat in a place. And when a person makes a bracha, a bracha applies to where he is, on what he's eating, in that place. And therefore, if a person will move out of that place, he can lose his bracha. Why? Because that's automatically reframing. You move into a different place, it's called reframing, and you have a problem that you have lost your bracha. There are exceptions to the rule. There are certain foods which demand that you come back to make a bracha achrona, so you have to come back to make a bracha achrona, then you didn't lose your place. And I'm not going to get involved in the pratim of that halacha. What I would like to discuss is the following issue. A person sits down to learn, and he has a sore throat, and he takes a throat lozenge, a candy, and he's eating his candy here in the Beis Medrash, and someone comes and calls him out, he has to go home. So now, he's leaving. He made a bracha on that candy here. I'm willing to say that eating a candy in the street is not something noticeable. It's not called the ochel b'shuk probably, right? So, but what about a bracha? Once he left this frame of the Beis Medrash and he goes outside, if the bracha was part of the environment included, or you go to a different environment, what is halacha? In short, the bottom line, I think that one is able to rely on the Igros Moshe, which he says that the candy that you're eating, definitely the bracha works on it even if you move to a new place. But that means if you decide to have another candy once you're outside, that is a whole different story. And there's a very big machlokas haposkim. The Pashta says you would need a new bracha on that candy.
And the candy's already in your mouth? We're talking about, or like you have
Even
a
according to
candy bar?
Ramosh, if it's not the one that you made the bracha on originally, it's a second candy.
You have a chocolate bar, you half ate it, and now you're walking with
So that depends. If, according to many achronim, this is like this. If I made a bracha on the chocolate bar, and then I broke off a piece and I ate it, so that whole chocolate bar would have the bracha on it. If I broke off a piece and made a bracha on it, then the rest of the chocolate bar would be secondary. Now, there's no connection really.
Even if you're in the same place.
No, if you're in the same. I'm talking about when you, the bracha will work when you're in the same place. So it works on all the things that were in front of you. How does it work on all things that are in front of you is a different question. Which, but definitely all things that are in front of you are included in it. Whether it's directly or secondary is a machlokas haposkim, and this has to do with the thing you made a bracha on, fell down and got ruined. If you have to make a bracha, if you eat something else, it's a machlokas haposkim. But again, all those things are talking about a very specific case. A person is here in the Beis Medrash. He made a bracha on his candy. He's eating his candy, and now he wants to go outside for whatever reason he was called away. Can he continue eating his candy? There are people who are people on the go. That means, as I say, those people on the go are never anywhere. Okay, I think that you all know what we're talking about. Now that person who's on the go, he is grabbing a bite on the phone, running into his car. Okay, you know what I'm talking about? That's like, unfortunately, very common lack of Tzelem Elokim which exists nowadays. But when he was eating, if I would ask him before you, where are you going to eat that sandwich? He'd say, no, never thought about it. Right? In other words, he didn't sit down to eat. He's eating on the run. If a person is eating with the mindset of being on the run, so then the bracha does not have a place to it, and therefore he's allowed to continue eating because that bracha is placeless. Is placeless. Meaning as follows. A person, according to many, this is a fascinating idea. Many poskim say as follows. When I eat, when I'm in my car, am I eating in motion or am I eating stationary? Again, you understand the question we asked? Okay. This actually, believe it or not, is discussed in Shulchan Aruch in two different scenarios. You have people that are going horseback riding together. A group of people going together. They washed one place, they got back on the horses, they continued going. They finished their sandwiches together, now they want a bench. Do they have a zimun or not? Did they eat together? Is there anything that connects them as a group? And they could be that they're all individuals floating around in the ocean in the same place, but there's no place that connected them. It's just a mindset that connected them. And according to many, this is called, even on a wagon, if they be on a wagon, could be that's called, as far as zimun, it's called that it's in one place. But as far as a bracha bimkomo, could be it's called that they were in transit. And therefore, according to, I think, the bottom line of the poskim is, a person who is eating in his car, and he's on the way to go someplace, and he walks out of his car, would not need a new bracha when he goes out of his car. Because we see that achila was a transit achila, was not called a stationary achila. Even, says Moshe Feinstein, even if I decided to, and this is something which is very, very common, you want to go on a trip and you have a sandwich, but you don't want to get stuck washing on the way, so you wash at home, and you take a little piece of your bread and you go. So even though you sat at your dining room table, and somebody who wouldn't know better would think that you're sitting down to have a meal, but in your mind, you're on the move, that's also called that you're on the move. In other words, it does not have to be, not depend if it's in your house or not. It depends if you actually would cover yourself, you set yourself up as being in that one place. Then you would have one halacha. If you were planning to be on the move, you would have another halacha, and therefore, I would say as follows: those, again, I'd like to ask Mechila for the nivel peh, but those who walk down the street eating pitzuchim, right? That was their plan originally, and one bracha would pater them. Okay, this is a serious issue, that because they're eating one achila and there was never any place, and that's an ongoing habit. The walk takes as long as the pitzuchim exist. And soon the pitzuchim ends, so does the walk. That's basically what goes on in that situation.
But you're saying so that people who eat on a plane or a train, they don't do zimun?
I said halacha mas for zimun, we say that it's called a zimun,
It is only
but for
zimun.
bracha b'mkoim, that there would be allowed to continue eating afterwards. There's a discussion about.
What about
Oh, I understand. You said it is a zimun?
For zimun, we say that they can be mitzvah for zimun, but for as far as whether the bracha is called b'mkoim, I think the Mishnah Berurah's psak at the end is that it's not called b'mkoim, and therefore they'd be allowed to continue when they disembark.
Those go together.
I'm saying it does not go. It does not go together.
So they make a bracha in their place, and they get on horseback, so they start riding along. They can continue eating relying on that bracha.
Correct.
And a bracha achrona,
They make whenever they.
that's sort of,
There is no place. They're in space. There is no. This bracha did not have a place.
You eat a piece of cake in Israel. You jump onto your plane, and you're flying along the Atlantic. You can make ala mikta very comfortably, without worrying about the fact that you're no longer in the same physical place that you were.
The Mishnah Berurah says the Igros Moshe says that's good enough. Okay. Okay. The next subject I'd like to talk about is something which is very.
One other question, a similar thing. You're walking every water bottle, and you
So like
drink
this.
every block or two.
So I'm not. I'll tell you the truth. I'm not 100% sure I know the answer to that question, and I was hoping someone's going to ask the question because I didn't want to bring it up without it being asked. My children say that women never go anywhere without a bottle. And one of my sons asked me, "Do you ever see a man with a bottle in his pocket?" I don't know, but women, wherever they go, they take water with them, right? Now, I don't know why it is like that, but
The men have a flask.
I don't know, but you don't see. It's not so. I don't. Okay, but it's not as common. It's not as common for men as it is for women. What happens? What happens? And this is a question which I don't know the answer to 100%. Sometimes what's going on is you're on a continuous drink mode. You know, it's a chamsin outside, and it's very hot, and you're drinking all the time. Sometimes it's like a cup of coffee. You had your cup of coffee. You're finished. In another hour, you can have another cup of coffee. Right? There are two different scenarios. One, the person is on a continuous eating mode, and one, the person is having two different. This is one eating, and that's another eating. The two things aren't connected. When the person is taking a walk, or a person's going on a tiyul, and he is carrying his water with him, two things. First of all, I think that he's on the drink mode. No, he's going to be drinking. He's not masiach das from his drinking. He's always checking himself, going to drink more or not. He's never finished drinking, so to speak. And in that case, I think that he does not have to make a new bracha. If it's a cool day, and says, I may need a drink later on, and that's why he's carrying his water with him, so then I think that you would have to make a bracha achrona. You should make another bracha rishona because the two drinkings are not related. In other words, if I'm eating breakfast, I can't say, well, I'll just, stagger along until lunch. The two things are not related. So when is it that it's continuous and when is it not? I don't really have a clear definition of that. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
The concept I can answer exactly how does it play out. There's some people who all the time who are,
You have the same situation in a stationary environment.
100%. I said you're sitting here in the base medrash. You're sitting in the base medrash, and it's a hot day, and you have to drink while you're learning. So,
Less than half an hour, 1 cup.
so some people, I'm not using this as a mushal. I'm not using this as a halachic or wise thing. Do you throw away your cup or you don't throw away your cup? Right? You understand? I'm not. I don't. It's not the, but the idea is, am I finished drinking, or I'm not finished? I'm going to have more. What?
Sometimes you're not sure.
So in that case, I would say that the halacha is that you should not make a bracha. Should not. Savik brachas. I will say, in that case of the water, I have a personal chidush, as we're talking about a personal chidush. A person who wants to be a camel. What a dream, right? I'm going on a long trip and it's going to be very hot. So I fill myself up, I super saturate myself with water so that I shouldn't be thirsty later on. Is that called a shoyse mayim litzmo? I'm drinking right now. I have absolutely no desire at all to drink. The only reason why I'm drinking now is so that I shouldn't be dehydrated and have to replenish my water supply later on. Do I need to make a bracha on this water or not? Because the rule is that a person who drinks water does not make a bracha on water unless he's thirsty. So this fellow who's not thirsty, Erev Yom Kippur, Erev Tisha B'Av, the person stands there and he guzzles down the water. Why? Because he wants to put money in the bank. He wants to have it for tomorrow, not because he wants it. Now, does one make a bracha on that drinking or not? It's actually a machlokas hapoiskim. My opinion, I think, is that a person does not have to make a bracha on it. That's not called litzmo. Many places can disagree. That's not called litzmo. In that case, a person who's not sure if he finished or not, l'daiti, if he drinks again before he's thirsty, then he has another reason why I wouldn't have to make a bracha, because he's not thirsty. So if you just remember to drink before you get thirsty, so then you have avoided the Savik brachas through another venue also. Okay, it's a good trick. It works. I will just say that the people who live like that with this drinking on the ongoing basis, they should figure out a way to have a reminder to make a bracha achrayna. Because normally what happens is a person who drinks, he finishes drinking, so he knows to make a bracha achrayna. But if you're on this continuous feed situation, so you don't know. So one of the ideas which I have for that is that you drink, you have a cup, you leave your cup by your place, so when you close up to put your Gemara away, you see your cup there, and hopefully your brain will turn on, and you'll remember to make a bracha achrayna. You know, you should have some kind of a device to make sure that you dealt with that properly. Okay.
And that's the question here also. Between speakers, we have food here.
I think,
listen,
I would like to give a compliment to the Olam. I don't think the people over here came here to eat. Okay? It's nice man schor b'tzidoy. You don't have to answer. And I think that you will decide every time anew, do I want to eat something or not? I don't think that the eating between one and the other, if what happened was you eyed a piece of cake, and then the person got up to speak, and you were too embarrassed to get it, so you're waiting impatiently or patiently for the next speaker to end so you can have that piece of cake, that's something else. But I think in this scenario exactly, every achila, ben gavra legavra, is a new achila. That's what I think is going on. I don't.
Not at all. Someone comes in, they see the table, and they say, "Oh, this is great. I'm gonna enjoy a little bit as we go along."
Yeah, but why? Why? That's not.
I know that it's here. I see that there's the.
I ask you a question. I ask you a question. You come home, and you see that there's cake, and your wife's not there. So you take a piece of cake, okay? So you take a piece of cake, right? You don't wolf the whole thing down. What? Well, it depends how much is there, right? But anyways, and then maybe you'll want some more later, right? Why? What happens in your house? You don't raid the refrigerator every time you walk in.
No, when you come here in the morning and you didn't eat your breakfast.
So now I ate. No, but now I ate, and now.
This is all my meal. Just not.
So I'm asking you a question. Before the first speaker came, did you eat? Were you full? Were you satisfied?
Not at all. I had a.
Oh, so that's fine. I'm talking about a person who came. I know a second. A person who came here. He had enough time, and he ate, and he decided die.
Oh, okay.
Die. So now there's another speaker. So now you decide again. Ani one said, no one said. Right? If the person was caught in the middle, obviously I'm not talking about that. That's the same as the case I spoke about. The person eyed a piece of cake. I want to finish. But if a person ate his to his satisfaction, because in another 45 minutes he may become ravenous again. He has that habit whenever he sees food, to seafood diet. That's fine, but that's not. There's no connection between the two eating. If again, I agree with you. If the reality was that he didn't finish, then he didn't finish. But that wasn't the question. We're talking about a person who did finish. He just knows I cannot have, and this is many times happens, I'm speaking to everybody and they're eating, so I have to eat together with them. Right? That's a different scenario. Okay? All right, I'd like to discuss over here, I didn't get too far, I want to discuss over here some of the complications in the subject of Iker and Tafel. Okay, I would like to just discuss a few scenarios which are very relevant nowadays and need a little bit of explanation. Bottom line, and I've said this over many shiurim, a person who eats croutons in their salad. Yes, I know what croutons are and I know what salad is. Why does he want to eat croutons in their salad? My opinion, this is my opinion, this is not a halachic opinion, my opinion is because it adds crunch. Salad, what? You disagree?
No, I said Baruch.
Now we agree.
Okay, Moshe Kivanti. In other words, salad has a problem that many of the things are mushy, and the person's mouth likes to enjoy the food. Crunch adds to the enjoyment. Excuse me for again, we're back to nibble pet. But so a person's eating it not for sustenance. The crunch adds a geschmack. That which a mizonos wins out in a taruvis is when you're eating it because that's what you want to be satisfied with. You're eating it as a food. Over here, if a person is not eating it as a food at all, he's not eating it as a food, all he wants, theoretically, if they would put in what? Cardboard, if that would work, whatever it is. Now, if the person, and this is the example which I like to use, there are people who have soup nuts in their soup. And there's a big rush. Once you put the soup notes in, you got to finish your soup quickly. Why? Because otherwise you're stuck eating the soggy stuff. There, I don't think it's so much so. I think the person also wants to eat the soup nuts too. And it's related to the same kind of idea. There, I think it's easier to understand that it's a mezoinus or maybe a mezoinus. According to Rav Wosner, in the case of croutons that are inside soup, he actually says that a person would have to make 2 brochos. If I'm not mistaken, that's he writes in the Beis Halevi. Because of this kind of an idea, sometimes you have that the two things stand out individually, sometimes not. I'd like to discuss the ice cream cone. Why does somebody eat an ice cream cone? So it seems to me, again, that people enjoy sticking their tongue out and they need an excuse. So the way that we're able to do that in a dignified manner is with an ice cream cone. Right? Why does somebody eat an ice cream cone on a cone instead of in a cup with a spoon? You want the cone? There are many people, and as I've watched, it's people who buy a sugar cone. So people buy a sugar cone, they pay 3 times the price, and they want to eat the cone. The people who buy that wafer cone, which gets soggy and seems like repulsive to hold after you're about halfway done with your ice cream, many of them, when they get down to the cone, throw it out. So why do they have it? Because it's enjoyable to eat the ice cream that way. Not because you stick your tongue out. But it's enjoyable to eat the ice cream that way. And you're eating it memela. The ice cream cone is not necessarily like an ice cream sandwich. The ice cream sandwich, the person is eating the sandwich because he wants both of them together. In that situation, Rabbi Feinstein, Rav Wosner, many places can say, there you'll make 2 brachas. Both have a prominence of their own, and even though in a classical sense it would be some kind of a taruvis, we don't consider it a taruvis, and you should break off a piece of the cone, and then eat have a piece of the ice cream. In a case, to end off with one more halacha, I'm sorry, I ran out of time. In a case where a person has a iker and a tafel or a taruvis, and he's not sure what bracha to make, what he should do is he should separate the tafel from the iker, and then make a bracha on the tafel. Because if you separate the tafel from the iker, and then you make a bracha on the ikr, could be the tough will be included too. So either you have to separate them both. Again, I have, let's say, let's find a good tarubis that you have an ikr and a tafel.
Rice checks.
Huh?
Rice checks. The half of it is wheat, the half of it is rice.
Okay, fine. All right, that's fine. You have that kind of a tarubis. So now, the mazonos on, well, both of them are going to be mazonos over there.
Meatballs and rice.
Meatballs and rice.
So rice and corn.
Well, not rice is no good, but meatballs and spaghetti, because there's a mazonos that's chamish nidogim. So if I'm going to take out the meatball and the spaghetti, and I'm going to make a bracha on the spaghetti first, so it could be it already included the meatball. So then you'd have to make it on the meatball and then the spaghetti, because otherwise you didn't take care of it. Unless what you do is, and this is the best thing to do, like if you eat both of them a little bit separately, not as a tarubas, then it would not be included. Or you take a piece out.
Schnitzels with the breadcrumbs and...
Schnitzel with the breadcrumbs, anything. I would answer the question the way when I was growing up, they said, oh, B'Sheni B'Yad Kamenetsky, if your wife, your mother, double dips the batter, then it could be you make a mazonis on it. Generally, the reason why the schnitzel has the breadcrumbs on it is to add crunch. It's not for satiation. It's so it shouldn't stick. But once you made it very thick, that should be like a cake.
It's for taste, though.
But anything which is like a taste, anything which is like a taste, and we'll just use this example because it's the best example I have. For those who speak Ivrit, there's botnim Amerikayim. I don't know, I never saw them in America, but botnim Amerikayim are these peanuts that they're encased in a flour coating. There are two different kinds. There's one kind that is like waffle kind of like a thick coating on it, that if you break it open you'll see little white bubbles inside of it. And there's one that looks like an M&M. It's just like a very thin coating on it, but be'etzem it's made out of the same stuff. The general psak is that if you have the ones that are the thin coating ones, even though the outside coating is a mazonos, but it's only there as a tzipui, to add crunch, to add it, but it's not called it's there as a food, and that would not demand a bracha you make on it adama. Once you have the thick ones, where it's substantial, then it will become a mazonos. Okay? Thank you very much.